Hey YouTubers, Gator here, and today I'm going to give you some of the tips that I personally like to use while I'm out on a long distance backpacking trip, or even if I'm just hiking long distances within a day. What I like to do to recover at the end of the day or help prepare myself early in the morning. So one of the first few things I like to do is make sure I drink lots of water once I get to camp or get to the shelter. At least along the Appalachian Trail there are a lot of shelters, and I usually like to stay at the shelters, so that's where I usually camp at night. But drinking water, so I don't drink probably enough water while hiking. I just have a hard time thinking about it, and it's very easy to get dehydrated. So I try and drink about a liter of water once I get into camp. Okay, you may end up paying a lot, but it will help flush out any extra toxins you might have gained from just working out and using your muscles a lot. It will rehydrate them. It'll help keep your skin healthy. I've had times where I didn't drink enough water before going to bed. I didn't think about it, and I got up in the night and my skin had really tightened up, and when I stepped down it split the skin on the bottom of my feet. So it was really painful the next day. And also drinking lots of water will help lessen soreness for the next day. My next tip is to stretch. I love to stretch. I stretch all the time, but I have met people on the trail who were watching me stretch and they're like, that is the last thing I want to do at the end of the day, which kind of confused me because I've also seen videos of vloggers who have done the whole Appalachian Trail, and maybe multiple trails, and one of the things I've noticed multiple people have stated is that they wish they had stretched more. So when you stretch, I know some people, if you're not used to it, it just sounds like you're working out more, but you're really not. When you're stretching, you're getting your muscles to relax. And when you exercise a lot, your muscles are going to tighten and tighten and tighten. And so stretching is going to relax them back out. It can help prevent injury, such as when you roll an ankle. If your ankle isn't used to twisting and it's nice and tight, then you're going to pull the muscle and hurt your foot. Whereas if it's nice and loose, think of a rubber band, if it's super tight and you pull it suddenly, it's going to break. Whereas if it's nice and loose and stretchy, you're going to pull it, it's not going to break. So same with your muscles. So you don't want to pull a muscle in your leg or roll your ankle and hurt yourself. You'll just roll your ankle and be like, oh, well, let's keep going. I find stretching to be very relaxing. When you first start out and you start stretching a muscle you are not used to stretching, then yes, it can be, sometimes you can get feelings of anxiety. I have certain muscles that are just like that, and give it some time, and after a while, your body will start to really appreciate it. It starts feeling kind of like a little massage. At the end of the day, it's like, oh, let's just stretch this out, and you'll feel so much better. I have occasionally done experiments with trips where at the end of the day, after hiking a lot, I have stretched out just one leg and not the other leg. And then in the morning, I was pretty much limping because the stretched out leg was able to walk normally. But the non-stretched out leg, the muscles were so tight, I couldn't expand it all the way. And so I was just kind of hobbling. To go with stretching, I also sometimes like to do a little self-massage. It's harder to do the massages. You can find people, you just have to make sure you're on the same page, that it's nothing personal, I just want a back massage and I'll return it. Or you can find a picnic table and rub your back on. I usually just use my elbows on my legs because that's where I need it the most. I found that, at least personally, I like to massage out this spot. I don't feel on both of my legs. I don't feel it get tight. It doesn't necessarily feel tight, but when I'm massaging up and down with my elbows, those spots tend to be really tight. So I like to massage that out. I'll use my elbows on my feet, help massage my feet, get them nice and loose so that they'll feel good and I can just sleep well at night. My next tip is to try and get as much proper nutrition as possible. I know it can be very hard on the trail, especially if you're going on a through hike. You end up finding all these dehydrated meals and not getting a lot of fruits and vegetables, but you really do want to try and get some. You want to maintain that nutrition and maintain your electrolytes, such as potassium, whether it's bananas or potatoes or whatever else has potassium, to help prevent muscle cramps and to be able to sustain your energy. If all you're eating is sugar, you're going to wear down more easily, and you'll have those calories, but those calories aren't necessarily going to help you as much. To go along with nutrition, you also need to make sure you're getting enough calories. I know I'm pretty good at when I first start a trip, I'll be like, yeah, 1 package of ramen for dinner, that's fine, and I'll be full. And the next morning, my muscles feel fine, but you'll often sometimes feel it more emotionally, like, oh, I'm more tired, I can't deal with this as much, I'm more irritated, and a lot of times it's just from not eating enough calories. So I'll try and make sure I eat more, and then my spirits often come back up and I feel better, and then I'm able to hike the next day after. With your nutrition, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting enough carbs and protein. Now, your carbs are what fuel your body. That's what's going to give you the energy to hike during the day, to be able to hike the next day, whereas protein is what rebuilds your muscles after you've worked them down. So you use the carbs to fuel you throughout the day, and then the protein rebuilds your muscles at night so that you'll be able to go the next day. If you're not eating enough protein, then a side effect can be that you'll start to smell. Like, if you start burning proteins, then you can get an ammonia smell. So you want to make sure you're getting enough protein. And if you're not getting enough carbs, then you're going to, be more sluggish. If you are eating too much fat, then sometimes it'll start to turn your poop yellow. When your poop turns yellow, it can mean that there is too much fat in your diet, and it doesn't mean, maybe you don't feel like you're actually eating that much fat. But sometimes when you're hiking a lot, you're doing a lot of strenuous exercise, your body doesn't want as much of that, so it becomes harder to process what there is, and it wants something simpler. So I'm not saying you have to go on a low-fat diet, but, I know it can be tempting when you get into town to finally just eat a whole pizza, but for me, that will end up hurting my stomach. But if your poop does turn yellow, it's pretty common, it's normal, you don't have to freak out. Just might need to adjust your diet a little. My next tip is to warm up your muscles in the morning. And it can include a little bit of active stretching. Active stretching is where you're not just sitting there stretching your muscles, you're moving it around slowly. But I like to warm up my muscles because at night they're going to tighten up, and especially if they're colder, they're not being moved, and so you might get something called the hiker waddle, or whatever it's called. When the muscles tighten up, you can't really move. A lot of people get plantar fasciitis because your muscles are tight, and if you just put all the weight, if just standing on it, your legs or your feet, you can start to crack your muscles, and then it's going to hurt, and then each day it's just going to get worse and worse. So before I even stand up in the morning, I start moving my legs around. Maybe I'm laying on my back and I'll put my legs straight up in the air so they can kind of stretch, and I'll roll my feet around and move them back and forth, get them warming up and moving. And then before I stand up, maybe I'll get up and start rolling up my mat, and as I'm rolling up my mat, I'll stretch out my legs a little more, or stretch out my calves, just to try and get them moving before I stand up, so I don't hurt myself or give myself plantar fasciitis, so that I can continue to walk as much as I want to that day. My last tip is to get enough sleep, or at least enough rest. If you're hiking, from dawn to dusk, every single day, day after day, your body's going to wear down and it's not getting enough rest. And a lot of, pro athletes and say, your workout is only as good as your recovery time is. If you don't give yourself enough time to recover, then you're not going to be able to go as far the next day. So make sure that, it's like, maybe you don't need a lot of time, but, if it's a longer day, maybe give yourself a little more time to sleep the next day, or make sure you try and stay off your feet as much as possible once you're in camp. If you don't sleep well, expect to maybe have a shorter day the next day. It's okay, It's better to, let yourself recover than to just force through it and injure yourself, and then there goes the whole trail. So those are all of my recommendations. If you have done a long distance backpacking trip and have some other recommendations on how to recover, I'd love to hear about it, so feel free to post your recommendation, or if you have requests for other videos with other tips, feel free to subscribe, and go ahead and leave me a little message and I will try to get to it. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Bye!